Well, hello, everyone. How are we all doing this morning? What a wonderful event to be at, even if it's on a Saturday morning, but to be at together to celebrate life and to come around the most wonderful cause, I believe the most urgent cause, the most pressing cause, but really the most wonderful cause that we have to come around together today. So we're among good company this morning, and I hope this day is just so inspiring and informative for everyone, because this is a movement that needs all of us. Not just the people who are organizing this conference or the people who may be standing up here, but this is a movement for each one of us to get involved in and to take a stand in, because it needs all of us. It needs all of us for the victory that we're going to have. But I'm coming from actually Texas and then Washington, D.C., and before that California. And I was driving around last night. I came in last night, and it was just getting dark, and your trees are so beautiful here. And I say that, it's hard for me to say because I think California is the most beautiful place in the world. But you have some gorgeous trees here, so you're in a beautiful area. But I came from, ultimately from D.C. and originally from California, because Live Action moved our headquarters to Washington, D.C. just over a year ago to take on what I believe is the greatest evil that we face today. And not just the greatest evil, but the greatest, the organization, the industry that's committing that evil. And I'm going to be sharing with you in this talk a little bit to just open our eyes further. I mean, many of us already know a lot of these things, but to open our eyes a little further about what we're really up against. And then what we can do together, what we can do armed with the truth that sets us free, what we can do together to stand up for life and to change many hearts and minds, because I believe many hearts and minds are being changed, and many more will continue to be changed as long as we can get the truth to them with boldness, but also with the love that has to accompany everything that we do. But a few years ago, I was in Los Angeles, and I was giving a talk right near my school, UCLA. Any Bruins out there? Oh, really? That's awesome. Go Bruins. That's great. And any Californians that relocated here? Okay, quite a few. Now, again, California I think is better than Oregon, but your trees are beautiful. I guess I'm not supposed to say that here. But I was giving this talk in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, this gorgeous part, the fancy part of LA with these beautiful homes and beautiful churches. And I was in a parish hall giving a pro-life talk. It was, I think on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I'm still a student at the time. And in the middle of my talk, this woman walks into the room. She's very tall, thin, and blonde. She was, looks to be about 40, 50 years old. She's holding a small dog, and she has a big frown on her face. And I remember thinking, maybe she, she looked like she walked off the set of Legally Blonde 4 or something like that, or 10, I don't know what it's at right now. And she, she looked upset, so I thought maybe a bad day in traffic, who knows, LA traffic is atrocious. But after my talk, I discovered why she was frowning, because this woman walks up to me and she shakes my hand and she introduces herself as a member of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America's National Board of Directors. And I said, well, hello. So good to see you here on the church property. You should come back on Sundays. No, I didn't say that. I just said, it's so good to see you here. How's it going? What's going on? And she said, young lady, she said, I saw a sign that said that you would be speaking here today. And so I thought I had to stop by and give you some advice as a mom. Funny or ironic that she would say, give me some advice as a mom, when she's advocating for, she said she got involved with Planned Parenthood in her 20s as a sex educator. She's advocating for the very violence that denies mothers their motherhood. And so I said, well, what would that be? What would be your advice? And I thought, free media training from Planned Parenthood. What are they going to tell me? And she said, listen, in the media and in your talks, in your speeches, wherever you go, you have to stop using the phrase pro-abortion, she said. Say pro-choice. And I thought, you came all the way to tell me this. I said, why? What's so wrong with the phrase pro-abortion? What's so wrong with abortion? And she said, well, it's just a very offensive phrase, that's why. And I said, well, why? I said, why? Why is it so offensive? What's so offensive about being pro-abortion? What's so offensive about abortion? And she said, well, abortion is a very difficult decision. It's difficult for women to make. And I said, well, why? Why is abortion such a difficult decision? What makes abortion so difficult for women? And she said, well, it's just personal, okay? It's a personal thing, and you can't just put it out there like that. And I said, well, why? Why is it such a personal thing? Why can't you just put it out there like that? And we went around in circles. I kept asking, what's so offensive? What's so difficult? What's so personal about abortion? What's so hard about abortion? And I quickly realized that she couldn't answer my question, and a small group of people started gathering around us, this little altercation, that this Planned Parenthood Federation of America board member would not be able to answer my question. What's so wrong, if difficult, offensive? What's so wrong with abortion? Because if she did, she would be looking head on her life's work contradiction. That while she was advocating, she thought that she was advocating for women and for the rights of women and for reproductive freedom and for justice, for empowerment, for choice, for all of these glorious sounding, these positive sounding words. She was really advocating for the killing of millions of tiny little women in the womb across the world every year, and millions of tiny little men. I pray for this woman and the many others like her who are entrenched in a web of lies, of false words, evil parading itself as good, that they'll allow themselves to see the truth for what it is, and in its violence even, in its destruction, and allow it in a way to devastate themselves, even to break their hearts. But then because they've seen that truth, they can be free to join our side. They can be free to join our side, which after all is the side of love, the side of life, and the winning side, the side that's going to be victorious in the end. Amen. And you know, many people like her are joining our side. We have people like Abby Johnson, and I remember just a few years ago hugging Abby Johnson, you know, at the Walk for Life in California, meeting her for the first time and just hugging her and thinking, you know, this is what it's all about. How wonderful that, you know, just, you know, literally a year prior, she was getting letters with my picture on them saying, look out for this investigator, look out for live action. We were up against Planned Parenthood, and now we're embracing. And that's really what is happening all over the country, not just with, you know, abortion industry workers, but with people on high school and college campuses who are seeing the truth, hearing the truth. Now the polls are saying the largest demographic for pro-life, that's the most adamantly pro-life, is young people. And that's happening. Those numbers are increasingly happening. NARAL, one of the another abortion leader groups, their president, former president now, Nancy Keenan, says they're so young when she's looking at the March for Life. There's so many young people, and you know, the cover of Time this year was, you know, they won a battle in 1973, but they've been losing. The pro-abortion powers have been losing ever since. There's a reason that this is happening. And so as I share now some of these things about this greatest evil and about Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry leader, let's keep in mind all of it with a sense of confidence that if we can continue to do our part to spread this truth lovingly, then the victory will be ours. Because here's the key. The truth is written in the human heart. The truth is written in the human heart. The love for the child is engraved in the human heart. When we see a baby, unless it's screaming, of course, it's like, this baby is so cute, screaming on an airplane next to us, of course. You know, and even then they're still so cute. But we see a child and we're just thinking, this is so adorable. Some of the greatest poets, artists, you know, the movies today are just celebrating the child, maybe sometimes in a funny way, but celebrating the child because the child is so beautiful. There's something so innocent and tender about a child. And I had my first encounter with abortion that really, you know, initiated me, you could say, into realizing this larger battle going on, this war going on when I was a child. I was 9 years old, and I had my first encounter that really opened my eyes to what abortion was. And many of you in this room may have had an experience like the one I'm about to share. First, you know, really understanding what abortion is, maybe at a very young age. I was about 9. First of all, just to set the background, I'm from a big pro-life family in Northern California, and I'm one of 8 kids. So that should tell you something about my family. We were pro-life, you know, inherently. And just being raised with 8 kids, you know, my parents instilled in us that life was precious, that children were precious, that, you know, from the elderly to the child in the womb, my mom was always having a baby, that was so wonderful. And I had 5 younger siblings. So I was like the mother to these 5 younger siblings, and I'm also in between 5 boys, so there's 5 boys and me and then 2 little girls at the end, so I grew up having to be pretty tough. And then I have 5 younger siblings, and so my mom tells a story when I was about 11, she was telling me one day, like moms say to their daughter, she's like, so when you get married, how many kids do you want to have? And I told her, kids? Why would I have any kids? I'm too busy raising yours. But of course, I'm joking. I mean, I was maybe half serious at the time, but thankfully the memory has worn down a little bit, and I certainly hope to, get married one day and have children. But I was raised with these children. I was a child, and so when I was, I had heard about abortion, as many of us may have heard, one word or another, I may have heard about it at the kitchen table in discussions in the 90s about the Clintons, Bill and Hillary Clinton, like they were bad words. Hope I'm not offending anyone. The discussion of partial birth abortion, and I didn't know what it was, but it sounded so terrible. And so when I was 9, I came across this book in my family's living room called A Handbook on Abortion by Dr. and Mrs. Wilkie. And it had this very serious looking woman on the cover. Some of you may have seen this book. And I remember thinking, this book looks like, really interesting, like a history book. This must be from the 1980s or something. So it was ancient history for me. None of that's that long ago, of course, but for me, it was a long time ago. So I open up this book, and it falls to the center where there are these images. And in shock and horror, I close the book and I push it away. I don't want to keep looking at what I'm looking at. And then gathering up a little bit of 9-year-old courage, I draw the book back, I open it up, and I look again. And what I'm looking at is the image of a tiny child, maybe 10 weeks old, in the first trimester, with newly forming little arms and newly forming little legs and a newly forming tiny little face that had been the victim of a first trimester abortion. And as I looked at this image as a 9-year-old, I thought with my heart just cut, is this real? Is this really happening? And then how could anybody do this to a baby? Or, are people doing this to babies? And I went and I found my mom in the kitchen, and I saw that it was a baby. It's only the first trimester. You can see, even in the first trimester, it's amazing how fast that single cell embryo grows after the moment of conception. It's amazing how quickly, within 21 days, the heart is already beating and pulsing, preparing to help grow the rest of that little body and form the leg and the arm buds. It's amazing and beautiful. And already, by the end of the first trimester, you have a fully formed little child right there. It's amazing. And so I went to the kitchen and I showed my mom this horrible image, and I showed it to her and I said, is this real? Is this really happening? And she said, yes, and that's abortion. She closed the book and I began to ask more questions. I read that book. I began to learn that, since 1973, this has been legal. This has been somehow a constitutional right. I learned that every day in our country there were over 3,000 of these happening, that there were over 1 million every year. And I learned that within 10 miles of my childhood home, where I grew up feeling so safe and so loved, there was a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, open for business on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, killing over 30 children a day, maybe 100 children every week. And I realized that even though I had been safe, there were children out there who were not safe, close to me. And so I began to ask myself, even going into my early teens, what can I do about this? Is there something that I can do? As I was getting older, I was also on my own spiritual journey. We were raised in a Christian home. I was, taught to the Bible, taught that Jesus Christ is our Savior, that He came incarnate because of His love for us, that we're made in the image and likeness of God. And I came across the readings of Blessed Mother Teresa. And this humble little nun from Calcutta, maybe this tall at a podium, whenever she had the opportunity, and she was asked so many times to speak publicly. She was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, but all she wanted to do was be with her loved ones, the lepers and the dying and the hungry and the lonely in Calcutta, India, and beyond. But she had very strong words to say about abortion when she was given the opportunity to speak. And these are some words that she addressed to, again, Bill and Hillary Clinton in 1994 at the National Prayer Breakfast. And this little nun is in her full beautiful blue and white sari habit, and she's standing, right here, and she's looking at this audience of some of the most powerful pro-abortion politicians in the world. And she addresses them with these words. She says, "The greatest destroyer of peace." And again, she's a Peace Prize winner. She's an expert. She says, "The greatest destroyer of peace in the world today is the cry of the innocent, unborn child." And then she goes on to say, "In a nation where a mother can kill her own child, what is left but for you and for I to kill one another?" The greatest destroyer of peace is this cry of the child. And what is left but for you and for I to kill one another if we allow abortion? And keep in mind, what is abortion? It's a surgery, they call it. It's a medical act. But what is abortion? It's turning the mother against the child. The womb is meant to be the safest place. It's looking at it from a situation of even medical ethics, or looking at it from a situation, the spiritual aspect, even biologically. It's the most antithetical to what the womb was created for. It's the opposite for what the womb was created for, a haven, and the most intimate of our human relationships between a man and a woman, and then between them and their child, is being violated. It's being turned inside out. It's being severed in the most violent way. And on top of that, when you look at this from the perspective of human rights, and we should care about this deeply, we're a country founded on human rights, founded on inalienable rights endowed by our Creator. Among these are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But when you consider human rights, so we look at this, even biologically or from the family, spiritually, but you look at this from the matter of human rights, you look at it there, and you see that the child in the womb in our society is the weakest member of our society. They are the weakest member. They have no way to defend themselves. They are literally trapped, in a good way, because they're meant to be nourished, to grow, but trapped in the womb. They have no voice, and they're being denied their most fundamental right to life, which is the right to life, their most fundamental right. So from a perspective of human rights, what we have in our country is what I believe is the greatest human rights crisis that our nation has ever seen, and I believe that our world has ever seen. Because to a proportion that we have never seen internationally, we're missing about 50 million children killed internationally. Over 1 million killed here. The death toll in the United States is past 50 million now that have been killed since 1973. And these are human beings with inalienable rights, including the right to life, who are destroyed, who are killed when they are the most vulnerable. That's why I've dedicated my life to this cause. That's why we're all here this morning. Because we recognize that we don't just have a special love for babies, okay? Everybody does. Everybody can. We don't just have some special calling from God. Maybe we do. But we're here regardless of anything special. We're here because the facts are the facts. And the facts tell us that this is a crisis that demands and deserves our attention. And this is not just another issue. This is not just another political issue, another social issue that'll go down with the halls of history as yet another things that people bickered about. But this is the thing that can break our country and is breaking our country. And if we do not respond to the crisis, we will not enjoy the freedoms that we ourselves hold dear. Because as Mother Teresa says, what is left but for you and for I to kill one another? And I would humbly submit that the shootings that we're seeing, even the suicide rate that we're seeing, the breakdown among our youth, the breakdown in between men and women, the divorce rate, the number of single mothers, all of these societal ills that are hurting our nation, that hurt our nation's economy ultimately. We're missing part of our workforce. When a family is unstable, the economy suffers. All of these things interconnected are as a result because we've forgotten that first right. And we've forgotten to respect and to honor the dignity of the human person in ourselves and in the people around us. And if we forget these things, these first things, then how can we remember anything else? We'll build a foundation that is not strong, and our country will not thrive. We will not enjoy the freedoms that we've come to enjoy, that we've even come to expect. The attack on religious liberty, should it surprise us? There have been news reports from Philadelphia about Kermit Gosnell. Has any of us heard of him? And the media is shocked. The media, when they finally realize what's happening, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this man was killing born alive, screaming children in his clinic. How is this possible? And USA Today approached me this week saying, write a column about why regulation, why we need more abortion regulation. Because the USA Today editors are submitting one about why we don't need it, okay? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of a trick, because it's not that we need more abortion regulation. But yeah, let's regulate, the industry out of business. But that's not enough. The problem here, the problem of people like Kermit Gosnell, the problem with the shootings that we're seeing, the problem even with the marathon bombers in Boston, is that we've forgotten those first things. And until we realize that abortion will always be abortion, no matter how pretty you make it sound or look, or no matter how many times you cover it up, but as long as an abortion is killing the child when they're the weakest, the most innocent, then we're not going to do away with Kermit Gosnells. We're not going to do away with all of these abuses. We can't do away with it. I really had an encounter with this as I got, older, I started getting involved in the pro-life movement as a teenager. I started up Live Action when I was about 15 with some friends. And as I got older, I wanted to find ways creatively to educate my peers, because that was our first place that we looked, some friends and I, because we thought if we could reach our peers, then maybe we could change some lives, maybe we could save some lives. And it's amazing, but the abortion numbers in many of the religious communities in our country, the spiritual communities, Protestant community, evangelical, Catholics, is the same as it is in the secular world, almost the same. And so that our children, many of our young people, are up against the same challenges and pressures. Even if we try to shelter them from them, there's so many of the same challenges and pressures that they face, and the same difficult decisions that they may be facing, even up into a pregnancy they don't know what to do about. And so we started by giving these pro-life presentations, and then I got to UCLA. And this was a decision because I wanted to find the most pro-life school I could possibly go to. That's a joke. UCLA is one of the most non-pro-life schools you could possibly go to. It's a fantastic school, I think so, but the lies of the age have gotten to the faculty and the administration, and UCLA is all about empowerment, but I quickly realized when I got to the university that it's anything but empowerment for women and for the student body, because this is what I saw. I got to the university, and you may see this at some of the universities here in Oregon. I mean, you may see it all over the country, but this is what I saw. I saw that there was a hookup culture in the dorms, that people were having sex, sometimes for the first time, these freshman girls getting drunk, with the freshman boys at frat parties, and that in the middle of campus, there was a health center, the Arthur Ashe Health and Wellness Center, and on every level of the center was a bowl of condoms. And there was the LGBT center talking about sexual experimentation and how wonderful it could be. And there was classes in student orientation, sexual ed classes when you first went to school, and it was all about how you basically have fun. Now's your chance to have fun. Just make sure you use a condom. So there was this false sense of security that UCLA was imposing on us, as well as an expectation that we be sexually active, and that was frankly offensive. At student orientation, they said, I know I came to college and I said I wouldn't have sex, but that was what I was saying, ha ha ha. I mean, offensive, and completely out of touch with what are the needs really of every person when we consider sexual integrity. That a condom is not going to solve the problem of a heartbreak or an STD. But this was what was being told to us. So I wondered, what about all the girls who are getting pregnant because of this? And I came across a statistic after doing a little bit of digging that there were over 2,000 pregnancy tests that were, filtered through the health center every year. So there were maybe at least 1,000, maybe for repeat tests, but maybe 2,000 girls at my 40,000 person university who were getting pregnancy tests at the health center every year. And so I thought, if that's what's happening, what is happening to these girls? They can't all not be pregnant. Some of them are pregnant, what's happening to them? And I never saw a pregnant student on campus. There were faculty members that were pregnant, and I remember seeing one woman one time, and we were doing this study, and I ran up to her and I said, excuse me, you look great, congratulations. I said, are you a student? Because you look young. She's like, no, I'm faculty. There was not a single pregnant student that I saw in my entire time there. So I thought, where are all the pregnant students? They're getting pregnant, what's going on? So this was my first undercover investigation, and this would begin to open my eyes into what the opposing side, part of the culture of death, and what I would call it, the opposing side says and does, the way that they think. This is exactly what we need to expose, because it goes against what's written in the human heart, it goes against human rights. And so I sat in this health center, posing as myself, so it wasn't quite a feat, it was pretty easy. I was 18, Lila, freshman, this is my Bruin ID card, but I changed the story a little bit and I said I thought I might be pregnant. And the head nurse at UCLA sat me down, and this is what she told me. She looked me in the eyes and she said, well, UCLA doesn't support women who are pregnant or help them necessarily. But then she went on to say, well, there's 2 abortion doctors that you can see at the UCLA Medical Center or, maybe Planned Parenthood. And she said, if you don't want it to show up on your parents' insurance, we can find a way to deal with that, because I was already insured through my parents. And she said, we can get the state of California to pay for your abortion, and no one will need to know. And then she went on to say, when I asked about are there other options, she said, adoption, but it's like giving away a present. It's very difficult. And then she said that if you have the baby, it'll be embarrassing, because in the classroom you'll have to use the bathroom and you'll embarrass your fellow students, and you wouldn't want to do that. So then she said, really, we can make this appointment for you for an abortion. And I realized in that moment in that little room inside the Arthur Ashe Health and Wellness Center, that this was why there were no pregnant women on campus, that they were all going to these abortion doctors paid for by the state of California, and then the heartache and maybe the drinking cycles and the drug addictions and the pain from that maybe would continue. And these girls would be told forever on by people like Nurse Brooks that maybe you feel sad, but it's okay because you're now empowered to pursue your dreams. Now you're empowered to live your life. But it didn't really feel like power when that girl was submitting herself on a table for an abortion. That didn't really feel like power when she was giving up her body and the body of her child for the violence of abortion, because it's not power. Because that's one of the lie from the culture of death. After this investigation, I began to think, okay, what's going on here at my school, but then what about these places we're being referred to? What about the abortion industry? What about Planned Parenthood? I had heard of Planned Parenthood, of course. I prayed outside of Planned Parenthood. Any of us have done that? It's so important, even to go once a month, just to, if you're a Catholic, say a rosary, stand there to pray, stand there to hold a sign, to be a loving sign of life. It's amazing how that alone can turn people around. So keep doing that, keep it up. It's so needed, not just once, but often, even though it's painful or even sad or frustrating. It's so good to do that. But I had heard about Planned Parenthood, and I thought, what does Planned Parenthood actually tell women going into their centers? Because again, in their PR, in their public relations campaigns, in their marketing is fantastic. In all of this, they appear to be so pleasing. They appear to be so positive for women. We're here for you. Care, no matter what, is their new slogan. And in all of this, it looks like they're somebody that you can go to trust. And if you're a woman in a tough spot, or a young girl in a tough spot, why wouldn't you go to Planned Parenthood? Especially if they've already developed a relationship with you at the school. Because that's another part of Planned Parenthood's agenda. Develop relationships through sexual education with our students, with these young people. Become the go-to place, the sexual authority on our teen website. They have a teen website all about sex. Become the sexual authority. And then now the child, the young girl, knows where to go if she gets pregnant for the $500 to sometimes $7,000 abortion, depending how late term it is. That's part of the agenda. Because when you look at Planned Parenthood, they do two things. And this is why I would submit that they are the most evil organization that has ever existed in our country, because they kill more people than any other organization here in the United States and internationally. They have an amazing international affiliate program in almost every nation on every continent. But they don't only kill over 330,000 children every year in our country and are political proponents of abortion. They are also creating, designing, mastering the sexual education curriculum for children as young as in kindergarten, breaking down a sense of innocence, making sex all about biological parts, breaking it down from the humanity of it, really, the humanity and the beauty of it, what it's meant to be between a man and a woman, lifelong in a marriage, breaking that down entirely, making it just a function that you can put a condom on, or you can pump powerful hormonal contraception into a 12-year-old, and then they can go and practice this function. And that is the pathway to sexual disease, and sexual dysfunction, and sexual addiction, and sexual unhappiness that so many people are experiencing, because it's broken out, it's disintegrated from the way that God created it, and the way that all of the best of psychology and even biology indicates what it's meant for. It's meant to bring life into the world. It's meant to be something beautiful between two people in a relationship that allows for emotions that feel trust and feel commitment. But it's been broken down. And in the breaking down of it, we see sky-high single mother pregnancy rates. And so is it any surprise that the abortion rate stays at about over 1 million a year, and Planned Parenthood in the meantime is upping their abortion numbers? Because their goal is to become the number one for women. The number one for women when it comes to sex education, and I keep doing this because it's miseducation, and for abortion. And that's what they're doing. They're increasing their abortion numbers. They're increasing their power. They're $1 billion organization. That number was up in the last year. Under the current administration, they're enjoying new privileges. They're enjoying bigger budgets. And over a half of their money comes from, guess who? Over a half of $1 billion. All of you know and should be very disgruntled about it, from taxpayers, from us. from us in a time of fiscal potential recession or economic difficulties. We are funding the biggest abortion chain in our country. That should outrage anyone. And even people who support abortion say, that's ridiculous once they discover it. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't be because we shouldn't be supporting, taxpayer money going into the biggest abortion provider. So all of this, I knew about all of these things. I had researched them. I was trying to educate people, and Planned Parenthood was pitching internships on my campus. They were trying to get women to volunteer with them. They had an internship program, and I thought, is there a way to expose this? How do we reach people? How do we get people the truth? And I was so hungry, and some of the people with the live action chapter at UCLA, we were so eager to just find a way to just show people what was really the agenda of this organization, because we thought maybe we can then save some lives and open some hearts and minds. And so this inspired me. In doing the research, I came across this study, and some of you may have heard of this, but it's by Life Dynamics by Mark Crutcher, a group called Life Dynamics out of Texas, Denton, Texas. And a survey was done in 2002 of over 800 Planned Parenthood clinics at the time. Now they've consolidated, there aren't 800. Many of them have, become mega clinics like the one in Houston. But these, basically they called over 800 clinics. They had an actor posing as a 13-year-old girl. She called the clinic. She said that she was 13. She said that she was pregnant, she was scared, and she indicated that she was in a relationship with a much older man. And Planned Parenthood, that should have immediately triggered mandated reporting for sexual abuse, which is required by law in every state in the country to different degrees. And instead, over 90% of the clinics said that they had a don't ask, don't tell policy about sexual abuse, who they thought was a 13-year-old girl on the phone. When I read this study, of course, I thought about my younger sisters. I thought about the young girls in our country who are in situations of abuse. I began to study it more. 2 court cases out of Ohio. One girl was 13 and one, I think, 14. One a situation of abuse with a soccer coach. One with her father, a victim of incest. Both taken by their abusers to Planned Parenthood, who, instead of reporting the abuse and rescuing the girl, gave them secret abortions, covered it up, sent them back into the arms of the sexual abuser. One of them who continued to be abused for 1.5 years, the other one who came in for a repeat abortion. And now these girls are suing Planned Parenthood because of the abuse that they endured. But as I was researching these things, I just thought, is there a way to demonstrate? If people at UCLA, even the cold hearts at UCLA, and by the way, they're not cold hearts. They're just folks that they've never encountered the truth about life. They've never encountered what abortion really is. They don't realize, first of all, their own dignity. They just haven't heard the truth. Most of them haven't heard the truth in a way that would touch them. And so they don't have it in their hearts. They're not reminded that it was written in their hearts, and they're not living it. And so I thought, well, maybe we can find a way to expose this. So my first investigation of a Planned Parenthood clinic was when I was 18 years old. It was months after the one at the Arthur Ashe Health and Wellness Center. And I decided to pose as a 15-year-old girl and walk undercover into a Planned Parenthood in Santa Monica. Has anyone been to 3rd Street Promenade in LA? It's a great shopping area, the Bruin, of course. It's a hangout spot. The restaurants, the shops, it goes right up to the ocean where there's a Ferris wheel. It's just beautiful, it's adorable. But right above a coffee shop is a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic open for business. And I walked in one sunny day. I had a camcorder in my purse. I had a voice recorder in my blouse. And I'm looking 15. I have an old t-shirt on. It wasn't very hard to do back then. Probably still wouldn't be hard to do. But I walked into this clinic, and my heart is beating rapidly. I'm very nervous. I'd never been inside an abortion clinic before. You can hear on the voice recorder this, backbeat to the whole investigation, like my soundtrack, very epic. And I get off the elevator, and I'm looking into the waiting room of the clinic. And there's all these women sitting there. And some of the women look like they're really upset or they're sad. One woman looked like, I remember she was about to cry. And I remember thinking, none of them looked like they wanted to be there. And I remember thinking that as I looked at these women, I wasn't just looking for some of them at one life, but I was looking at 2 lives. And in the clinic on that day, one of those lives, a cycle of death or death would be started for one of those lives, and they wouldn't make it out alive. And on the wall of the clinic, it said Esperanza, or hope in Spanish. And I thought, this must be the most hopeless place in Santa Monica. And again, Planned Parenthood's advertising, take the positive words, the words that belong to our side, freedom, choice, hope, and put it on the wall of an abortion clinic. Because what is the truth? People are looking for freedom, for true freedom, for hope. People want these things. But Planned Parenthood is therefore taking that language and applying it to what they're promoting, which is the opposite of hope, which is the opposite of true freedom. It enslaves, it hurts, it wounds, it destroys hope and the opportunity for love. After looking for a moment, I gathered up my nerves and I walked into the clinic and they buzzed me in. I walked up to the check-in counter. I said, hey, I think I'm pregnant, can I talk to somebody? And the woman said, what's going on? And she took me behind the check-in counter because I mentioned I was 15 and that must have clicked something with her. She didn't want the rest of the people in the room to hear what we were about to talk about. She took me behind the check-in counter. She said, what's really going on? I said, well, I'm 15 and he's 23. I said, what should I do? And in California, this is a clear case of statutory rape. She should have immediately reported this to Child Protective Services. This is abuse. I'm 15, he's 23. But instead, the Planned Parenthood worker laughs and she says, okay, just figure out a birth date that works. Lie on the paperwork. Say that you're older than you really are. Nobody needs to know about your abortion. We won't tell anyone and he can pay for it. My first piece of advice at a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic. We don't care. We don't need to know. Lie about your age. After that, my heart sank because I thought, one for one. My first clinic, this is what they tell me. What is going on at all the other clinics? And all the other young girls in our communities, our junior high girls, going into these clinics after being sex educated by Planned Parenthood, getting pregnant, not knowing what to do, or taken in by abusers, and taken into these abortion clinics. And what is happening to all these other girls? And why isn't anyone reporting on this? Why doesn't anyone know about this? They're breaking the law. So after that first investigation, we did another one the same day at another clinic. We found the same exact thing. At that clinic, the manager of the clinic sat me down. And what I'm about to share with you is my first counseling line that I heard at Planned Parenthood, my real counseling session. And this is a peek into how Planned Parenthood counsels women, how the We're Here For You organization counsels vulnerable women. And I'm sitting in this room posing as a 15-year-old. They're saying it doesn't matter about your 22-year-old, 23-year-old boyfriend. We don't care. But then she goes on to give me her advice. The manager took me on as a special case, and this is what she tells me. She says, honey, when I was 17, I got pregnant. And I said, really? Well, what did you do, And she said, well, it was really difficult. I was still in school, But you know what, honey? I had my baby. And I remember thinking, she had her baby, maybe is she pro-life, maybe she's undercover at Planned Parenthood doing pro-life counseling, and I'm undercover pretending to be pregnant, and who's going to tell the other person first that they're undercover? But I'm not going to go first, so I'll just keep going with to see where it goes. So I just said, really? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what did you do? And she said, well, if I could do it again, she told me, I would do it very differently. If I could do it again, I would not continue the pregnancy. And my son, he's 16 now. But kids cost a lot. The economy's doing really bad. He's still living at home. He's 16, I know. Kids cost a lot. The economy's doing really bad. She was telling me that if she could choose it, she would go back in time and have the abortion that she never had. She was, in a way, mourning the abortion that she never had, and telling it to me as an abortion vulnerable girl that she thinks it's so great that she would even go back in time to have that abortion. So of course, what decision was she telling me to make right there? Even if you have this baby, you'll wish you didn't. That's what she was telling me. And since that clinic, when we started to launch our national program and go undercover across the country, we heard that line again and again. We heard other lines similar. When I was 17, I was 16, I had the baby, I regret it. Or I didn't have the baby and I'm so happy. And I remember one counseling session, I was sitting there posing as maybe a 13-year-old with this nurse, Planned Parenthood, and she looks at me, I think we were in Indiana, and she looks at me and I said, do you have any children? Again, I'm saying I'm 13, he's 31, she's saying we won't tell anyone. I mean, ridiculous age differences. We made them very dramatic, just to kind of like say, come on and report this. But Planned Parenthood, no, they were not going to report that either. Heartbreaking. But I looked at this counselor in this clinic and I said, do you have any children? And she said, no. And I said, oh, okay. She said, well, my husband, he didn't want to have any. She said, because, you know, I have four, he has children from another marriage. And she said, but we got pregnant and you know, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I had an abortion because my husband didn't want to have any. And I looked at her and I could tell the pain in her face. And I looked at her, and even though I'm a 13-year-old posing, you know, I'm basically just asking her, I said, well, do you regret it? And we have it on tape, her face hardens and she says, no, I don't regret it at all. But you can see pain written on every line of her face when she says that. Because when we hear, I don't regret it at all, the best decision I ever made. And I remember I was at a protest outside of the Supreme Court a few months ago, and they were screaming, I love abortion. I love abortion. I wish I could have more abortions. And that's not coming from a place of freedom. That's not coming from a place of hope. That's not coming from a place of joy. That's coming from deep woundedness and deep confusion and deep pain, such deep pain. That's what's happening all over our country because the pro-abortion lobby has told women that it's not a baby. So if you're grieving, it's not a baby. And they delegitimize the pain of our women. Over a third of women in our country have had abortions. And they delegitimize their pain. And so we're dealing with so much woundedness. And we know this. We know this because of the brave women who have had abortions, who have spoken out about it afterwards, sought the healing that they need and deserve, and have spoken out about how abortion does not liberate, it breaks down. How abortion does not free, but it hurts. And that abortion is the opposite of what a woman deserves and what is empowering to a woman. And we know that. That's why we're here. After those first two investigations, we ended up putting them on YouTube. And I remember the first day I'm in my dorm room clicking refresh on my YouTube page because I'm so excited. You know, people are going to see the truth. You know, now there's no denying Planned Parenthood really doesn't like women. You know, they don't support them, and these girls are abused. And I was so you know, naive. I thought this was going to be awesome. So the first day there were about 100 YouTube views. And maybe 50 were from me in my college dorm, and 50 were from my mom up in San Jose, clicking refresh. And so I thought, well, that's not too bad, you know. And then the next day there were about 1,000 views, and I was like, this is great, you know, the blogs are picking it up, this is awesome. And a couple days later there were over 20,000 views on the videos. And I was like, we have arrived. You know, this must be maybe half the student body could be watching these, this is great. And then, you know, day 5 comes around and I get an email from Planned Parenthood, and it's a threat of a lawsuit. They're saying, dear Miss Rose, if you don't give us the tapes, we'll sue you for $5,000 for every video. And I remember thinking, I don't even have $200 in my bank account, but you know, come and get me. But no, I didn't think that. I just thought, well, what do I do? You know, I don't have a lawyer. And so I got on my knees and I just said, God, whatever you want. And you know, within 24, 48 hours, I got pro bono legal support. And those videos were picked up by the O'Reilly Factor. I had my first O'Reilly interview. And they were aired for millions of people to see. And that's what happens. In your work, whatever it may be, for the dignity of the human person, your work to bring people to God, your work in love, if you encounter any difficulty, that's going to be used as an opportunity for God to reveal His strength. Any difficulty, any temptation, any struggle. I learn it again every day. And that's what St. Paul says in Romans 8:28. He says that St. Paul says that God works all things for the good of those that love Him. Do we really believe it? Will we really believe it when we're persecuted, when we're on trial, when we're suffering? Do we really believe that God's going to use it for our good? Well, we're called to believe in it, and it's in believing it that we unleash the power of God and His graces to transform our lives and the lives of those around us. But we have to trust God. We have to put our faith in Him, and that's why in all of this whole movement, this whole work for life, it has to be founded in a faith that we have, a belief about human dignity, and a faith, I believe, a faith in God and that He is loving and that He wants goodness for us and for the people closest to us. He wants us to be ultimately totally in unity with Him in heaven. That's, I think, the end game in all of this. But after that, that first, big, media expose, I thought, this is great. This is the way. And I was flooded with emails. I still remember, getting so many emails from people I don't know if they're, oh, there we go. Getting so many emails from people all over the country saying, we saw the videos, this is great. I was pro-choice, but I applaud you for what you're doing. I mean, just really interesting emails, and I thought, this is amazing. It's opening people's hearts and minds. And so we started this journey of doing investigations across the country. My summer breaks became, times to go across the country undercover. And we started to, investigate sexual abuse cover-up and sexual trafficking and, medical misinformation, manipulation. Have any of you seen some of these videos? Some of us. They're all on liveaction.org, and I would encourage all of you to watch some of them. And, even groups like CBS News and CBS Nightly News and CNN have picked up these videos and aired some of them, because they're the truth of what's going on in the clinics. They're the actual truth of what's going on every day in the abortion industry and lobby. And the video that I want to share with you now is from one of our investigations on gendercide. And have some of you are familiar maybe with the gendercide videos? Have any of us seen them? A few of us? Okay. Basically, Planned Parenthood last year was complaining about a war on women. You may remember it, right? The war on women that all these people were waging against, women. Well, the real war on women is happening in the womb. There's over 100 million missing women in India and China, all over the world, because they're being targeted for abortion, because they're not wanted. And groups like Planned Parenthood are behind some of the first sex-selective abortion technology that was sent to India back in the 60s and 70s to help perpetuate cultural biases, possibly against the girl. And in the United States even, Planned Parenthood is part of this gendercide that's happening even here in the US. And it's a problem. I mean, my area of Santa Clara, where I'm from in Northern California, the demographics in some part of Santa Clara are worse, meaning that there's less girls than boys, are more imbalanced than parts of homeland China. Because communities in the United States, some people in the United States are choosing sex-selective abortion for their little girls, sometimes for their boys even, but for their little girls because they're not wanted. This is another aspect of the culture of death, and it's also part of the designer family. I want my perfect family, my boy and my girl. If you get pregnant with a girl, that's the wrong sex. I'm going to have the abortion. So this is something that it goes beyond cultural biases, and it goes into this obsession with power. Obsession with control of creating the perfect family, having it my way, and abortion is used as a tool to make that realized. And so this video is one of our investigative videos exposing this. We released this last year.
Over 100 million girls are missing today. These girls were victims of female gendercide, the targeting of females for extermination through infanticide, and most often the aborting of preborn girls just because they are girls. The Economist reports, the destruction is worst in China but is spread far beyond. Even sections of America's population have distorted sex ratios. Gendercide exists on almost every continent. If experts are right and gendercide is taking place in our own backyard, what is being done to protect our girls from the most brutal form of discrimination, violent sex-selective abortion? In April 2012, Live Action investigated abortion clinics nationwide to discover what would happen when the clinic receives a blatant request for a sex-selective abortion of a baby girl. In the footage you are about to see, Live Action went undercover at Planned Parenthood in Austin, Texas.
Have a seat here. Thanks. So, yes, you're pregnant.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
And so, what are you leaning more towards? I see that you say that you want to terminate if it's a girl, so are you just wanting to continue the pregnancy in the meantime, or what?
Yeah, I think that would be the plan.
The abortion covers you up until 23 weeks.
Okay.
So it's a little over 5 months. Little.
Okay.
And usually at 5 months is usually when they detect, whether or not it's a boy or a girl.
I see.
So you would be like right Sometimes
there.
they can tell at 4. I've seen that happen, but it just depends.
Depends. Do you think I should go and just ask for an ultrasound and just not tell them that I'm going to terminate if it's a girl? Or I just feel like there's been some judgment for my...
to be honest with you, I would probably think so, just because, we've had even clinicians, regular doctors that actually have even told women, you can't go and terminate after your 16 weeks, which is not true, but, a lot of doctors, they'll place judgment because of the fact that the brain is already developed, pretty much everything's already developed.
Yeah.
The brain is already developed, pretty much everything's already developed.
Yeah.
And then for you to go and terminate, usually we tell them, you don't actually have to say what you're going to go do. So I have actually applied for Medicaid, got on Medicaid as if I was going to continue my pregnancy. Went through the OBGYN, and then me and my husband decided we're going to go ahead and terminate. We terminated, and I still stayed on Medicaid and just got on birth control. Right after I got on birth control, I just stopped using it.
Right.
Didn't even want it anymore.
I didn't use it anymore. So, so then I could, then we could probably, you're thinking like if we did that, we could probably get pregnant again soon after.
Oh yeah,
that.
I've had 2 abortions and I have 4 kids.
Okay, so all right.
So
again,
from experience,
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with getting pregnant immediately.
Okay.
Right afterwards.
All right. Okay.
It goes on for a few more minutes, and this is part of a 5-part series. This is part of a 5-part series that shows this in a range of different states, a range of different clinics. I urge you to go watch these, and it's really powerful because you can just share them with friends or with family. You can post them to your Facebook, and you'll start some interesting debates. I certainly have started some of my own on my page, but it's really powerful because, even with this series, I got an email. We got another email just a few weeks ago saying, I was pro-choice, but after seeing these videos, I used to support Planned Parenthood, but now I cannot support them any longer. So it's really wonderful to see that they really do open eyes. They really open eyes and they touch hearts because people see this is what's really going on with this industry. I want to share with you and open for just a couple of questions because I'm going to run out of time here and we're on a tight schedule, but share with you just something that in all of this, it's very dark what we're facing. We're facing the killing and the violence against the child. We're facing, again, all of these related abuses, even sexual trafficking. Planned Parenthood, we've documented them, aiding and abetting sexual traffickers, self-proclaimed sexual traffickers of little girls, selling their abortions and their STD testing or whatever to these victims of trafficking. So that it goes on and on, the different abuses. And in all of it, it can be very weighty. But in all of it, again, remember the truth that we're preaching, the truth that we're speaking, the way that we live our lives, and with the truth that that we know in our hearts about about human dignity. And if we can live that, that courage when we encounter people telling them the truth about abortion and human dignity, but do it with love, that's the way we're going to transform this country. The truth sets people free, but the way that we carry that truth, and the power of a video is amazing because a picture speaks 1,000 words. A video is, maybe 1,000 pictures or even 1,000,000 pictures, and it can speak so many words. But the way that we encounter people and work with people and talk to people, that is really where it's at. One person to meeting another one person, sharing with them that your life is meaningful, my life is meaningful, and this is what it's really all about. Because some people have never really been talked to about, in a loving way, about what abortion really is, about the culture of death versus the culture of life. It's amazing, especially on high school and college campuses, the conversations that just haven't happened. But if we have those conversations, if we educate ourselves, it's amazing. We'll see people change their minds. And even at UCLA, people would become pro-life in front of my eyes. They'd say, I think I'm pro-choice. We'd start talking, and by the end of the conversation, it'd be like, well, maybe I don't know that I'm pro-choice anymore. I'm definitely erring more on the side of pro-life. Again, it's amazing what people will think when they're just given an opportunity to think, when they're asked some questions. But I want to share with you just a quote, and then there's time for a couple questions. But this quote brings me a lot of encouragement, as we're in this fight, and it's from St. Augustine. And he says that people travel the world to marvel at the height of mountains, at the vast course of rivers, at the circular motion of the stars, at the compass of the ocean. But he says that people pass by themselves without wondering. And this is why, with all of this work we do, we have a huge smile on our face. Because what St. Augustine is saying is that the most wonderful of all of God's creation, of his amazing creation, is the human person. He's saying people pass by themselves without wondering. The human person that's wonderful, that's created in God's image and likeness. Our life is wonderful. Life with all its suffering and difficulties is wonderful, is beautiful. And if we can have that peace in our hearts and that joy in our hearts, when we do this work, we will be unstoppable. Because that's the way we will persuade our country and inspire our country with that joy and that peace in our hearts, knowing how wonderful is my life, how wonderful is your life, how wonderful, how worth it is the life of the little child in the womb. And that's why we're all here today. That's why we're all dedicating ourselves again to do whatever we can, to pray, to prioritize, to sacrifice, to give ourselves, educational efforts on high schools and colleges, wherever it may be, at our churches, and to find ways to reach more people with the truth, with that smile on our face. That's how we're going to transform this nation. I'd love to take just a couple questions with the last few minutes I have, if anyone has any.
What happened to the lawsuit?
What happened to the lawsuit? Well, it was a threat of a lawsuit, and it was dropped. Once the O'Reilly, picked up the videos, and I had an interview saying Planned Parenthood's suing me, on national TV. This little girl, Planned Parenthood did not like the way that looked for their PR, so they, resorted to utter silence. And so one of Live Action's tactics in our investigative work is to kind of get them talking. Because generally speaking, when they talk, they get themselves in trouble, because there's not a lot of good things you can say about this video. There's not a lot of good things you can say about the truth, about the abuses at Planned Parenthood. So that's one of our tactics, is get them talking, get them defending this activity, get them defending Kermit Gosnell. They can't do it. They cannot defend abortion, and as best they try. So that's we'll see. They haven't sued me since. So I'll let you know in a few years if that's still true. Yes. The question is, the Kermit Gosnell situation, it's pro-lifers' fault. Some people in the media are saying because we're not making abortion, we're making it so dark because we're, I don't even know the argument actually, it's so ridiculous. What, was that the argument? So Planned Parenthood, which is supposedly pristine and clean, there were protesters outside of Planned Parenthood, and so this woman went to Gosnell's clinic. Well, the reality is Planned Parenthood is not any better than Gosnell. They do the same thing every day. They kill the same children. They kill more children than Kermit Gosnell could have ever killed in his entire life. And they hurt more women, and they kill women. In 2012, just last summer in July, Planned Parenthood in Chicago killed 24-year-old Tanya Reeves. They let her hemorrhage to death, practically to death, in one of their side rooms. They didn't call the ambulance for over 5 hours because they didn't want the embarrassment of an ambulance picking up one of their patients to the rest of their staff, their patients. So again, this is just another sample of how the lies are it's a lie upon a lie. And it's not safe for women, it's certainly not safe for that child.
How about Delaware?
And Delaware, a great point, Gail. In Delaware, reports just came out that the Delaware Planned Parenthood conditions were so horrific, blood-stained, materials, they weren't sanitizing anything, that half the staff quit. And they had to shut down the clinic because the staff got so fed up with how dirty the clinic was. And who knows, maybe there'll be a lawsuit out of that clinic soon because they killed somebody too we don't know about yet. That's the thing. When Planned Parenthood kills a woman, very often they're going to settle that case as quickly as possible and keep it quiet. So we don't know half the stories that are out there. Live Action documented 24 medical emergencies associated with Planned Parenthood in the last 2 years. 911 calls. Operation Rescue, another group, was getting their 911 call recordings. Calls that were made from Planned Parenthood saying, we've got a woman hemorrhaging, we've got a woman bleeding here, what are we going to do? Ambulances, stretchers that pulled up to the door. What happened to all those women? How many of them died? How many of them were infertile for the rest of their lives because Planned Parenthood botched the abortion? We don't even know these stories because Planned Parenthood is a billion-dollar organization very good at keeping the truth silent, and that's why it's up to us to get that truth out there. I think there's time for one more question. Yes?
I just want to say that God is very proud of you.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind. Thank you. Thank you so much. We are all in this together, and Gail, thanks again for having me, and I'm very delighted to have my uncle and cousin and boyfriend here too, and sitting in the front row, and we are all in this together, and God is, this God is not a losing God. God is not a losing God, and we are part of a victorious fight. So thanks so much.